What's poppin', everybody? Welcome to Culture Popped Season 1, Episode 18. We're back with another comics-focused episode. Today, we're going to be kind of going back to the good old days, I guess you can say. We're going to be talking about Batman pre-crisis. And when I say pre-crisis, well, I do mean pre-present day comics. We're actually referring to pre-crisis on Infinite Earths. Because honestly, anything pre-crisis is pretty much anything prior to the past 5 years when we talk about the crisis of comics today. But no, this week we're looking at a few Batman comics. Look, there's so many good Batman comics. We were just talking about this backstage. There's way too much to try to cover from pre-crisis in an hour and a half to 2 hour show. So we kind of had to whittle it down, but I'm thinking we might have to come back to this at some point to explore some other books or just make a series of classic comics. We'll see. But I've got some great guests with me tonight. One just ran away backstage because he's a loser like that. So I'm going to introduce the prettiest one of the group, Eric Breen.
Who ain't running anywhere, even if he wanted to.
I love it. So Breen, welcome to the show. This is your first time here. I'm super excited to have you here because I kind of view you, as well as Joe, as kind of like a comics encyclopedia. And I think we're going to kind of get to talk about some really awesome comics and kind of how they helped shape not only comics in general, but specifically Batman. So thank you for being here.
Well, I said thank you for the kind words. Although, yeah, there's a show I do every Wednesdays where we have a guy named Paulo Costa, who's 20 years younger than me, speaks 5 languages, and he knows more about comics than I do on all 5 of them.
Oh, Jesus.
I've never met anybody. Yeah, Joe and Paulo amaze me. They're not old enough to know as much as they do.
Fair. Speaking of a certain Joe, we also have Joe Corallo in the house.
Hey, yeah, I was going through because I have a lot of like pre-crisis Batman stuff that I really enjoy. Like, was it the Silver Age Volume 1 Omnibus, which is fantastic. I highly recommend. I also have a bunch of the Golden Age, like in the 50s. They put out. Now they have the Batman Golden Age omnibuses 1 through 10.
Mm-hmm.
They're all out, and Silver Age Volume 1. So it's 11 volume omnibuses uninterrupted of Batman, basically from his inception to like 1958.
Yep.
Do you have all 10?
I don't have all 10 yet. Some of it's like, I feel like it really, like the early stuff, like the very early on stuff, and then in the 50s, I think it really like, there's a little bit of a lull, I think, in like the mid-late 40s, and then it picks back up.
I stopped buying it at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's around.
I figured I'd make the first old joke.
Yeah, no, that's fair. But then, you know, especially once you pass that into, you know, obviously, you know, people bring up the Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and like what was it? My volume 2 here, signed by, you know, Neil and Denny. So
show off.
I'm probably gonna keep this one, you know, it's wouldn't wanna rid of that. But then you go into, let's see here. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff. There's, you know, what was it? Archie Goodwin did some good stuff.
I love Archie Goodwin on Batman. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Archie Goodwin on Batman is really good. Let's see. Got a few other things here. The obviously, and we're going to talk about Strange Apparitions, and most of that's in, you know, the Legend of the Dark Knight, Marshall Rogers, which I also got Denny to sign. There's that. But that was, I mean, this is just, you know, fantastic stuff.
Joe, Yul is complaining about how you whip it out whenever you can.
Yul's not complaining, but what was it? I think Breen has this one too, the Len Wein one, which is a really nice, you know, hardcover there too. And this is right around. Let's see, you get this, and then the Tales of the Batman Don Newton, which also has a lot more Denny stuff because he came back to detective. He created Maxie Zeus around here, a few other cool stories during that. You get what was it, the Marv Wolfman stuff.
Yep.
Also, you get some good stuff in there. You get the Jerry Conway run, which is one of my favorites. They did 3 hardcovers for that.
Wait a minute, Joe, can you show those again? I blinked and I missed them.
You did.
Yeah, just like the
really
release
good.
of them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is something that they should really make a bigger deal out of because it's one of the best runs you're going to get of Batman.
Agreed.
It's the Doug Mike stuff after that, which has been collected horribly because you can get I have volume 2 because most of volume 1, there's a couple of issues in the volume 1 that aren't in all the Jerry Conway stuff, but there's I think there's one complete story in this, and everything else is a part 1 of 2 or part 2 of 2. Because Don Newton and Gene Colan were, bouncing off there. And then, the Michael Golden stuff, which, he did a lot of Bat Family, but he also did, I don't know, I guess a missing Thinking Critical retro of the Batman Special #1, which was absolutely fantastic. And then Michael Golden did just a little tiny signature up there. It was very nice. So Michael Golden's a pretty talented guy. Just throwing that out there. But yeah, lots of good stuff. I think there's plenty of stuff. Well, that's the thing too, is because I talked to some people who, and I'm sure we have all, including some people in the chat. There might even be some people in the chat that think this, and shame on them. DC didn't start for me until after Crisis, or I don't read anything before Crisis. I stick to the post-Crisis stuff because that's when DC grew up, or when that's when DC became readable and stuff. And people are literally missing out on hundreds of incredible comics.
Yep.
With that mindset.
Oh, absolutely. Completely agree.
Joe and I are in the camp that the pre-Crisis, this 5 to 8 years before the Crisis, are better than the first 5 or so years post-Crisis.
Oh yeah.
I don't know that many people that share that opinion, which means there's a lot of people out there that are wrong.
Yeah. Well, honestly though, there's a lot of people that say that, and that's the opinion they hold. And if you ask them if they read it, they say no. And if you ask them if they're going to read it, they're like, nah.
Yeah. I think a lot of people just have a misconception that, earlier comics lack in quality. And look, it's different types of storytelling and a different approach to art. But a lot of times I feel like the storytelling itself is better. And, a lot of the writings, especially compared to present day, but
it's different because you're not writing for the trade.
Correct.
So it's a different mentality.
And I think also DC had a reputation when Marvel came in, all the things they did differently, whether it was crediting creative teams to continuing stories, subplots. You had to read issue 10 maybe to understand what's going on in issue 15. You didn't really have to do that with DC.
Right.
And so there, it was mostly, there were 4 kids. There's rarely 2-parters because you never knew if the newsstand was going to get the next issue. Stan just kind of figured you would. And so the few books that did attempt to aim higher, if you weren't there or if you don't know about them, it's kind of natural to have that opinion. They just assume that they were as disposable as everything else, which is a shame because Batman Detective from 80 to 85, or actually 86, really good stuff.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, I think it's not like a lot of that stuff was completely unjustified. It's not like every book DC was putting out was, hit after hit, but they put out a lot more hits than people gave them credit for. And Marvel also, like, I think it's fair to say in the 70s, like, they did some experimental stuff and some of it worked and some of it not so much.
Yep.
Are we talking drugs or comics now?
I mean, clearly both. I mean, what was it like when Jim Shooter has his like stories of like going in like a suit and tie because he was from DC, but when he goes over to Marvel, it's like just like a hippie commune. And,
Lordy. Well, we've had pretty much just general conversation going on so far, but we do have very specific stories we're going to look at tonight. Before we start diving down that rabbit hole, though, I do want to go to the comments and just say hello to some people that are in the house. Yul Carter, first one to show up and let us know that we're late. And he's sad that we have no poll. What can I say, Yul? I'm great at letting people down. We've also got Mark McGrath in the house. Hello, sir. Flaccid Phoenix. Sup, chat and panel. What's up, Flaccid? Mark McGrath did say some great Doug Monk books during this period. Absolutely. And I'm going to go ahead and just reveal this up front. We don't have a Doug Monk book that we're specifically highlighting, right?
No, but I mean, you always could, because that whole run is just incredible. It's
for anyone that thinks that we're not a Doug Monk fan, I would say Joe and I have had multiple conversations about Doug, the work he's done on Batman. I think he's actually written the character of Batman more than any other writer between his run on Detective. I guess both runs, because he had two separate runs on Detective. I think he had a series of issues in Batman. He had the
two runs on Batman.
Yeah.
Like
Legends of the Dark Knight. Like just...
Yeah.
And I think in a lot of ways, he doesn't get credit for how he shaped the seediness, the underworld crime of Gotham. I feel like he really kind of played with that aspect a lot, and then brought in some really cool stuff like Nocturna and brought some, anyways, yeah, we're huge Doug Monk fans, but we don't have a specific story highlighting his work, but that doesn't mean we don't love what he's doing or did. Beard of Liberty, hello, sir. You can see me in Beard of Liberty on Thursdays on Roman of the Empire's channel when we discuss TV shows and or films. So come check us out there. We've also got Mr. MVP himself, Max Von Priestley, in the house. Hail. Max is apparently taking a break from schoolwork. He's taking a break from his homework to come hang out. Dude, Mark McGrath just jumping in with all the good stuff. Brave and the Bold with fantastic Jim Amparo art. After number 200, it becomes Batman and the Outsiders, which is another book that I love as well. We didn't do any Batman Brave and the Bold, but Neil Adams, I believe, got his start on Brave and the Bold, didn't he?
We may have to mention
start.
A little Brave and the Bold while we're here tonight.
Of course.
Yeah, of course.
I think we kind of have to. We've got Mrs. Sassy Sasquatch in the house. Josh and Kisses. Mrs. C, where's my sausage and pep? Good to see you here. I hope you're having a good week. Always enjoy your Sunday stream where it gets a little sassy. Appreciate it. We've got DJ Smith. Bronze Age Batman is superb. What's up, Josh? Hello. I agree. Bronze Age Batman is... I love late 80s Batman.
Mm-hmm.
And I love stuff from, throughout the 2000s, especially the late 2000s leading up to New 52. But Bronze Age, I think, is like by far the best in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll go into it some more. But part of that too is I felt personally, and I think a bunch of other people probably feel this way, like that if you liked Batman the Animated Series, the tone and feel is probably closest in that Bronze Age where they're it's darker and grittier than like the Silver Age, but it doesn't take it too far. Like it feels like a little like it's grown up a bit, but there's still a little bit of levity. You'll still have, you know, Bruce like at the console with the cowl down, and like Alfred bringing him tea, and it's not like, you know, and he's just acting like a person, and it's not like the Frank Millerization of the character. And it's just like, oh, these are just like, this is like a guy who's passionate about doing this thing. And sure, he's not the most normal guy, but he's like somewhat like grounded and relatable in a way that I think too many iterations of Batman have gotten to the point where they've leaned too much into this, like he's this mythological creature kind of thing, which is it makes him less penetrable of a read.
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah.
Completely agree with that. We do have Andrew Haley in the house. He says, "Hey Joe, I saw you on the Comic Binge earlier this year."
Yes, I believe we talked about Judge Dredd America, which is a great storyline for people if you never checked that out. And the first like half of the like Jim Shooter Legion era, you know, going over like what was it, right before the Dominators and Mordru and all of that. So, you know, you had we went over like the Fatal Five, the Death of Pharaoh Lad, and one of my favorite stories is that a 2-part story. I'm blanking on the exact issues. It might have been 348, 349 of Adventure Comics, where they don't know it, but Universo has secretly become like the president of the United Planets, and now like the Legion are wanted, and they're hunting down the Legion. It's so good. It's a really, really great story, and every single Legionnaire is used well in a way that you'd be hard pressed to find other Legion stories where so many Legionnaires are being used and all of their powers are being used in a way that makes sense and also keeps the story moving along.
Yep. Last but not least, we have Eric Breen also in the chat with a comment: "If I were Doug, I'd be pissed." Yeah, well, you know, he probably is pissed. He's probably pissed that he doesn't get the recognition that he deserves.
Not even here.
As long as he's getting, you know, as long as he's getting checks. I mean, they just put out, they reissued the, was it the Nightfall Omnibus? So hopefully you get some money from that.
Hopefully. But, yeah, because even him and Kelly Jones, their 2 omnibus are hard to find. Joe,
I bet you they're not going to be hard to find at stately Corallo Manor.
No, the new it's way too much money. I didn't pay full retail, but
are you saying you stole it?
No. But no, this is like because they know people will buy this, so they jacked up the price to $150 when this should be $100 omnibus.
Yep, of course.
Yeah, especially because, I mean, I love having it oversized, and no offense to the comics in this story, but you could get most of the comics in this in a dollar bin.
Yeah, true.
So
true. I no, legitimately though, because it's from that time in the 90s where so many were printed, and I could probably go get 85 to 90% of the Nightfall storyline and single issues from my local comic shop just by digging through the back issue bins they have there. So
yeah, and look, I'll be honest with people here. I don't care about Azrael. I just don't. Like, I know, like, in some circles, that's something you don't just go throwing around or you're looking for trouble. But
yeah,
you know,
James Tynan would probably be very upset with you right now.
But like, hey, if you really, if for people that like Azrael, like, great,
Yeah,
you do
I mean,
you.
fair.
That's fantastic.
Same.
I'm glad that you're happy liking Azrael. That's fine. But he just does. If there was something less than nothing, that's what he does for me. So,
Breen, is that what Azrael does for you?
I've got a Billy Preston song going through my head right now. Yeah, I agree with Joe. I never cared about him. Like I said, his time as Batman mercifully came to an end and was never really revisited.
Yep.
It was just there. I mean, but kind of tells you how comics have changed. What was that? Less than nothing. There's got 100 issues.
Yeah.
100, and yeah, and honestly, I said there was a guy that kind of was kind of like a poor man's Barry Kitson, but Roger Robinson, I think his name was. I think drew almost all of them, and I think Denny O'Neil wrote all of them, didn't he?
He wrote a ton of it. Yeah.
I know he liked Azrael more than the two of us did. I know that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, it had what you want in a book, a stable, creative team. But what it didn't have was something either one of us wanted to read.
Yeah.
Now, I had all 100 of them, but then again, I bought everything for years. But yeah, that character was just, I said, he was there.
Yep, pretty much. I mean, he faded out very quickly too. I mean, once you finish that run, you could tell they didn't know what to do with the character. And I think by early 2000, he's pretty much just completely out of the picture. So
yeah, no, and then I mean, he comes back every now and then. I know, he was in Curse of the White Knight as well, which is an Elseworld. I got that, but like,
didn't he battle for the cowl when Batman had disappeared there in like 2008? Didn't he get one of those one shots?
Oh, yeah. But I'm trying to remember if that was when the other Azrael came into play.
But there were more than one because
one
wasn't enough.
Yeah, they had the second guy. Was it? I think his name was like Michael Brown or something. Is that right, Joe?
It's something like that. Yeah, I also don't care. Like, if you think I don't care about the first Azrael, wait till you hear how much I care about the other.
Oh yeah. I think that came around Michael Washington Lane. That's what it was.
Yeah,
that was his name.
Yeah, Michael Washington Lane. It was a black guy that took over the mantle of Azrael. But yeah, I do think he's played a small role. But then I think Jason Todd was the one that took up the like Azrael costume, right? Or similar. Maybe I need to go back and revisit that. I remember being hyped for that.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and revisit that too. I've been meaning to go through the Grant run and like that era again. So, but I was reading hundreds of issues of Legion, and then I dove back into Love and Rockets, and then I read the Incal, trying to catch up on other comics.
I just love that Joe's looking around his room at the books. It's like,
I'm just like, here you go. There.
That room is like a freaking TARDIS. Like from the outside, it just looks like, a lonely closet. You walk inside and it's a whole freaking library of omnibuses.
It's a lot of omnibuses.
Are you on the first floor where you live, or are you on a higher floor?
I am not on the first floor.
I'm waiting for your floor to just collapse.
Well, when it happens, I'll let you know.
Okay, sounds like a plan. Well, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and start jumping through these specific stories. And again, like I started pulling this together, and Joe had mentioned the story, Breen had mentioned the story. I wanted to kind of pepper a few things in, and there was so much stuff that I was wanting to pull. And when you're trying to delegate between important moments versus good stories, it can get jumbled really, really quick. But as far as important moments go, I feel like we had to at least reference Detective Comics number 27, the first appearance of Batman, written by Bill Finger, art by Bob Kane, created by Bill Finger and Bob Kane. And yes, I'm putting Bill Finger first because he deserves it.
That's fine. Get some Jerry Robinson love in there too, and not for nothing. No one mentions how Gardner Fox. I believe he.
Yeah.
Yeah. Too bad. Too bad. Also created, what was it? The utility belt, and was the first person to introduce the Waynes, I think.
Yeah. Gardner Fox did like a nice little run between Bill Finger and Gardner Fox. A lot of the mythos of Batman as we know it kind of came from those two men. But I do want to mention, so I added this little picture, of the original concept of Batman by Bob Kane, where he had the red outfit, the blonde hair, and the bat wings, and then we ended up getting the version that we see here in the actual comics. So it was essentially Bob Kane had an idea for a character, drew this up, and that's really all he had. He didn't have an idea for story. He didn't have, any concept of what he wanted things to flesh out from this. When he took it to Bill Finger had taken inspiration from stuff like The Shadow and kind of pulled that in to create this kind of darker image with a darker story. And a lot of people, this is what a lot of misconceptions people have too. They think that Batman was hokey and cheesy pretty much all the way up until a lot of people think the 80s when it decided to get serious. But you had a decent run of some darker comics until probably a year or two in.
Well, yeah, I mean, you had villains like Hugo Strange and Dr. Death.
Yeah.
Like,
and you had Batman murdering people, which is, kind of taboo now.
Well, Batman didn't really start getting silly until the Code came in.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you've got this guy, he's out in space and he's traveling through time. And like in World's Finest Comics, there was this kindly professor that would send Superman, Batman, and Robin to all points of Earth's history. And like I said, in Batman, he was always somewhere out on like the planet Meepzor with whoever. I stole that from a friend. But yeah, and then I guess since the Code was still relatively new and fresh in the 60s, even when it got away from that, the stories were kind of campy, which I'm guessing that kind of gave the inspiration. Like when they were creating the series, they needed something as a template. In the comics, it was just basically what they were doing in the comics on steroids.
Yes, because even that first episode of Batman, I think the first episode of Batman 66, the series, had the Riddler as the villain, and there's like documentary footage out there of the writers and the creators of the show discussing a specific comic that influenced them, and they even talked about how they filmed things a certain way to reference the comic. But yeah, that kind of slapstick comedy was pretty much a dead lift from the comics at that time. The only thing that wasn't really included in the series that was in comics was that whole kind of space aspect but that was more so of a worldly thing, obsession with space at that time. Clearly.
Oh yeah, that was long in the rearview mirror by the time the show was created. So I said that was more of a 50s thing, and then the early 60s they brought it. Late 50s, early 60s they brought in Batwoman. The original. There was the first Batgirl, but that was her niece. Bat-Hound, Bat-Mite.
Yep.
So that's it was interesting times. They're fun stories to read.
Yeah. And I think I think all of us probably fit into this, but I know that a lot of like Silver Age Batman, Superman, like a lot of the DC like 50s, 60s Silver Age stuff, I appreciate it way more now than I did when I was like a kid or into my teens and even into my 20s. It's like now I'm like, oh, this stuff's amazing.
I'm with you in that respect. I've grown to appreciate it more. I would say also in my 20s, like I hated the Silver Age. I was like, this is stupid. It's too silly. It's nonsense. And now that I've learned to like lighten up a little bit, I've grown to appreciate it more, and just kind of the fun creativeness of it. I've just, like they went for it, So,
oh yeah, no, and there are legitimately like good, rivaling Marvel Silver Age stuff. And I know I brought this up before with probably both of you, but Doom Patrol and Legion were both, for the most part, like really rivaled a lot of what Marvel was doing. Like you could put it up against, maybe not Spider-Man and Fantastic Four, but just about everything else. Like,
right.
They've kind of had a Marvel feel. I mean, Doom Patrol, I think more so even than the Legion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It had
when Jim came on. When Jim Shooter was on, it really took it up to the next level to that Marvel feel. But yeah,
it's like Arnold Drake was trying to emulate Marvel, but couldn't quite get the feel of it. So it might have come across as a little sillier than like if it had been like a Marvel book, a similar Marvel book. But I loved it. I said, that's everything we share. Yeah, huge Doom Patrol fans, and that the omnibus is out of print and goes for gazillions of dollars, and they never did finish the soft covers.
Yeah,
because DC doesn't only suck today; they sucked yesterday too.
Oh man, I love it.
Their reprints. They've always been terrible at that. I'm glad to see they're at least picking it up with the omnibus now. And again, though, in their defense, I picked up the Emma Peel Wonder Woman omnibus at Ollie's a couple months ago. That hadn't been out that long. The fact that it's already gone through all the channels that it needs to get to an Ollie's kind of tells you, why are they even bothering to put them out?
No, I do love that era. I have that omnibus, the Silver Age Wonder Woman Volume 1, and today I ordered the Silver Age Wonder Woman Omnibus Volume 2. And then at this point it's like they have to put 3 out. So now I'll have the 1 through 3, which bookends right with the Emma Peel era, and that'll be a nice chunk of Wonder Woman history there.
Joe, when they go to, when all the comic book companies are fighting over you, when you get to DC, tell us that, I'll sign with you on the guarantee that there's a Wonder Woman Silver Age Omnibus number 3.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I really want that finished out. There's a few things that I would like that. I'm waiting for them to get into the Bronze Age Flash. Yeah, that would be nice.
That's nothing. They did get fairly far with Flash, so they got, I think, up to like the early 200s.
Yeah, but it's still one of those things. And they put out the Death of Iris West hardcover and some stuff, but there's so much that isn't there. There's a bunch of like Green Lantern, especially like Bronze Age Green Lantern. Like once you get past Hard Traveling Heroes, there's like random like hardcovers and softcover collections, and some's in print and some's not.
Yep.
I wish they'd do that.
DC could stand to do what Marvel does with like their Masterworks collections, and just start running through them. Because I think like
Epic collections.
Yeah.
The Masterworks.
Okay. Yep. So, that would definitely. I think there's an audience there, and even some of these collections that they do, they like as Joe was talking about, they leave stuff out a lot of times. So DC could stand to do better collections. We'll put it that way. I do want to hop in the chat because we got Omega Man coming through here. Howdy, partners. He also referenced Wonder Woman and Superman have Silver Age omnibuses coming out in a few months. Yep. Eyeballs. We're looking at that.
That's I really want them to go through that Superman Silver Age era, especially like the 50s into the early 60s. There's just some really, really good stuff. And then I think it picks up again in the Bronze Age. And again, like I feel like there's a lot of really good Carrie Bates stuff in the Bronze Age, Flash and Superman, I think in particular. It's just not in print, and they've
Yep.
never collected it, or it's collected in like random hardcovers. There'll be an issue or two of something, and yeah.
Remember the Justice League where Carrie Bates becomes the supervillain?
Mm. Jeez. I have to look that up.
I was like, I don't remember that, but okay.
I'm pretty sure it's the Justice League, but through some quirk of fate, he ends up as the supervillain in the story. Now, I say that's
Yeah.
There's a Brave and the Bold where Jim Aparo is drawing what's actually going on in the issue as it's happening. So I mean, of course that's Bob Haney writing, but I don't think Bob Haney was writing the story where Carrie Bates becomes the supervillain.
Yeah, no, that was Justice League 130, 123, 124. Let me see.
Joe, are you looking to see if you have that omnibus?
I might have it in here. Let me see.
I love it. While he's grabbing that. Oh, go ahead.
I was saying
Oh, gotcha. While he's grabbing.
Yeah, but Joe's young. Let him do the legwork.
Yeah, of course. Another thing that Megaman said was Green Lantern #4 that came out this week felt like a Silver Age book. Some of these books, Mark Wade's World's Finest has felt kind of like had a Silver Age kind of feel to it. The Green Lantern
has a Bronze Age feel.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair.
Yeah. Fine, correct me. Correct. It's fun and it's not taking itself too seriously.
I have it in because I have that obnoxious like 13 hardcover box set of Crisis, and that story's in this one. Which I remember that because I read this one recently, not those stories, but because this hardcover has Justice League's 147 and 148, which was the Legion crossover. As I was going through all my Legion stuff, I was making sure to read all of the crossovers and everything. So, yeah.
Speaking of Bronze Age, Omni said he would just like to see more Bronze Age Omnis. Completely agree with you there. I think it would help introduce some of those stories to people that aren't reading them. Also, Zach's in the house.
It is insane the amount of Denny O'Neil written Batman stories that have never been collected.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, look, I don't think Irv Novic's like the best artist ever, but come on.
Hey, you shut your mouth. Irv is a legend.
Yeah, I don't see when Alter Ego does a tribute to Joe Corallo issue, then you can criticize Irv Novick, sir.
Lordy.
That's fair. You know, like I appreciate Irv Novick more now. But I appreciate him enough. Dude. I would love more of that stuff in print, but it's just not in print. It's crazy.
It is crazy. I agree. It's crazy. We do have Zach's in the house. Hey, Josh. Hello, Zach's. Welcome. Good to see you, sir. Zach's has a terrific show on Wednesdays called What's Good Wednesday. Worth checking out. We also have that degenerate Nosferatu, the vampire. Look at this nerd bullshit. I'm here to hear about the difference between twinks and hotters. That gets discussed on Max's show, not here. Sorry, Nos.
Also,
I'm sorry.
What's to discuss? A twink is they tend to be a 29 and younger, smooth, not like built, but like tone guy. And then an otter, it's like usually like you could be a little older as an otter. You don't have to be quite as toned, but you're hairy and you're still skinny.
Yeah. Yep.
That's it.
Pretty much.
Discuss?
Yeah. Max discovered that he's essentially an otter, and now it's been a topic of conversation. Or he's what would be classified as an otter.
I don't know if I would say that Max is an otter. I think Max is probably a twunk. Let's be real. But yeah.
We'll have to go have a debate. We'll have to get Max to help get this settled on Twitter.
Crap. Zach's just put a thing up for my channel. I might have to make another video now.
There you go.
I don't have time to make videos. I'm too busy whoring myself out to any channel that'll have me.
There you go.
Make a in defense of Irv Novak video.
I'll just. Okay, I'm going to need a file photo of you first.
Right. Breen's over here like, shit, I guess I actually have to like put some work in and do something instead of just showing up and discussing what I know. Oh, man.
Isn't that enough? I'm lazy.
Fair. Mega Man, before we move on, before we jump ahead another like 30 years to look at comics that we're going to cover for tonight, Mega Man said Jeremy Adams has name dropped Green Lantern Silver Age villains to Goldface, Sonar, and Major Disaster.
I love the Silver Age Green Lantern. Yeah. It's good stuff. Where people
all right,
check it out.
You've passed into annoying.
I know, right? Ooh, look at this omnibus. Ooh, look at this omnibus. I wouldn't have a home if I had all the omnibuses.
So who's more impressed with your omnibus collection, the Twinks or the Otters?
Probably Otters.
Yeah. The Twinks would be like, ew, what's that?
Twinks aren't really known for reading.
Fair. That's completely fair.
I have rarely been so as befuddled as I am at this particular moment.
And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to move on to our second book of the night.
I'll be right back.
And Breen runs away. So I said we're going to fast forward roughly 30 years, but we really are fast forwarding roughly 20 to 30 years. Hold on. Yeah, 30 years. To kind of go from Detective Comics number 27 all the way up to Detective Comics number 395. And this was Denny O'Neil and Frank Robbins jumping in with Denny's first book on Batman and his first time teaming up with Neil Adams to deliver the book that's kind of quoted and cited as being the issue that changed Batman's tone from the campiness that we're used to for a good 20 years, the series, and kind of going back to its darker roots. Joe, what are your thoughts on this issue and where it kind of falls?
Well, yeah, it's really interesting. And I mean, obviously, this is like a beginning sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think for a lot of people, it's really like a little after, because this is what, like about a year and change before we get the the introduction of like Raja Ghul,
correct,
and Talia and all that.
Yep.
And like that's really I think we're like it's really firing on all cylinders for people. The Man-Bat stuff before that also.
Yeah.
I think there's some stuff going on there. But yeah, I do love, because this is that like era of Batman where he'll just be like, I have to go on a plane to Madrid today for something. And I do love that. I think the big things here, what Denny did from this issue and beyond this issue, is getting rid of Robin.
Yeah.
He's off to college, and like,
Yep.
So limiting Robin's involvement, really stripping it down, bringing it back to those sort of like detective-y kind of roots. You had some reintroductions of villains, but you also had more stories that were like, and there were some reintroductions of some like fairly obscure Silver Agey kind of villains. Like, oh god, what in the werewolf story, it was Dr. God, I'm blanking on his name right now, but he would later be involved in the whole beginnings of Arkham Asylum and all of that. But he was a Silver Age villain that they brought back. So they were doing like those sort of things. and again, like those creepy kind of things like Man Bat, and then like really delving into, well, this is when you start getting things like, Matches Malone
Yep.
and all of that. Like you really were, you were getting so far removed from the campiness, and a lot of that was because the show was over.
Yes.
Around here, like, so it was like they felt it was time to move on.
Right. Yeah, it was. I think one of the kind of like critical things you mentioned too was getting rid of Robin and sending him off to college, because I know that was a purposeful decision, and I think it was Denny O'Neil had mentioned something along the lines of letting Batman grow back up. And for those of you that don't know, the entire point of the introduction of Robin to begin with, all the way back in the 40s, was they discovered that even with the darkness of those earlier Batman stories, it was mostly kids reading them, and they wanted to bring in that kid, so Robin, so that kids had something to quote unquote associate with and see themselves with, and that kind of kicked off that much lighter tone that went super campy and out there. And this was kind of that return to form, and that's why I put it here, because it's one of those things that what this symbolizes is greater than the story itself.
No, sure, and I do love that. I love the what was it, because this is the whole, like, that's that vampire story, right?
Correct. No, where he's researching why they're eternal, pretty much.
Well, I don't think they're vampires, but it turns out that as long as they stayed where they were and didn't get excited, they wouldn't age. But she falls for him, and the man chases her, and basically they both age out, like almost instantly at the end of the story.
Yeah, because this is because I have it here. Let me.
Of course you do.
Of course. And then you got Omega Man not helping. I'm on Joe's side. I have all the Omnis he's been showing off too.
Look, we all love him, but I said, annoying is annoying.
It's true. I'll own it. But
like an Omni.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, in that hardcover there, it's good. It's a good story. People should read it.
Agreed. Zach's had popped in with, I watched an interview with Jack Kirby from the 90s. I think he was pretty good. Yeah, Jack Kirby was definitely pretty good.
He was all right. He did a few
things. A few things. He could have been more creative with his designs, but
I mean, really, what the big legacy he has is bringing back the Newsboy Legion.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else he did, but he did some work for Topps, who was it? Pacific. Yeah, he's Pacific Comics legend Jack Kirby, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. Like, him and what was it? I'm trying to think, because what was it? He did this comic about it was a comic about a captain that he wrote with, he worked on with Joe Simon.
Do you have a can explode on you, Josh? Or
all right, Josh, you ruined my joke. I was going to make a joke about how Joe Simon and Jack Kirby put out an issue with a famous captain, an issue 1 in 1941, Captain Marvel, which they did. They also did Captain Marvel Adventures #1 in 1941, which was the same year as Captain America, and I was doing a bit, and fuck it.
Fuck it. Am I still possessed?
No, it's fine.
Okay, I changed mics. Jeez, sorry.
It's a good issue, too. People should read it. It's Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. It's pretty good.
I legit was like, is Joe fucking with me right now? Is this this week's of like, before we get to that. So I don't know.
No, but it's good. People should check that out because it's a good comic.
Yeah. Real quick before I kind of turn to Breen to get his thoughts on this. Sorry, y'all. I don't know what happened with the audio. If y'all heard it, I apologize.
Yeah,
you can keep apologizing. It's fine. I'll listen.
Yeah. Miniface says he considers he corrected himself and said 395 at the beginning of the bronze bat. I do think there was a little bit tonally that happened before this that kind of led to that direction that it doesn't get the credit it deserves. But yes, I do think most people look at this as the turning point for Batman specifically. Breen, would you agree or disagree?
No, I put it in the ballpark. I think just what Adam's art brought to the character, because if you think about it, if you read a Bob Haney Brave and the Bold with a different artist, and then you read one with Neil Adams' art, it makes the stories feel more serious.
Yeah.
And that was what he was able to bring to it. And so, yeah, I would say I would tend to agree. What were you showing there, Joseph?
Well, this is the Captain America cover that pays homage to that, is from 277 there. Yeah, that's people have that.
Yeah, Miniface had put also was there a Captain America cover that was an homage to this cover. So
it's a good run. This J.M. DeMatteis, Mike Zeck. People should read it. It's good. They did a good cap.
We have to stop referencing books so Joe will stop just like magically grabbing it. He's like freaking Hermione Granger over here. She's got that book bag that is also like a TARDIS. I
happen to really like Captain America, so I have a lot of his comics.
Yeah. Well,
there's a lot of good information on this stream. People should watch it.
I do want to kind of comment on something that Breen had mentioned in terms of Neil Adams' art and how it brought a different look to it. And one of the things that I loved was Neil Adams speaking to what inspired him for when he was going to draw Batman. And it was Christopher Lee as Dracula. It was Dracula. I think it was, Dracula. Because he loved the way Christopher Lee moved. And he said there was like a grace, but also a horror to it. And that's what he wanted in Batman. And I like Neil Adams' work. I am personally not a fan of Neil Adams as a person because I think he's a douchebag. But
he's dead, Josh.
Yeah, I know. But every time I met the guy, he was an asshole. So, and not even
dead now. You won. Get over it.
I won. I out-survived you because I'm younger. But yeah, no, you can't knock what he as arrogant as he is. He's earned it in a lot of ways. Not that
he's dead.
Well, whatever.
I wish your name was Jim, so Joe could look at you and say, "Really,
he's dead, Jim."
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
class. I love the original Star Trek too. We could just go off about that as well.
There are others.
Well, they did movies after that.
Well, yeah, 6 of them actually.
Yeah.
That's
nice. Lordy, y'all ready for the next story?
I'm ready for Joe's next story. I'm sure it's going to be a banger.
I'm waiting for Joe to grab another omnibus and then have a story.
Well, I have that in trade.
Yeah. This, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, Breen and I did that on Thinking Critical.
I know.
Yeah, once upon a time, in a land far, far away, when he was only 18K west, give or take, we would do these things called retrospectives.
Yep.
And we would take several issues and then after that, the single issues and talk about them. Those were nice days.
Those were good days. I mean, look, if Wes isn't going to do it, it might be worth looking into here.
Those were the days, my friend.
I know. We might have to.
Now, he's over 31K. He's doing a 31K away from us.
Yeah. Well, I'm over 200. No K, just 200.
I'm over 200 too. I'm trying to work on that.
Honestly, though.
Yeah, I'm stuck at about 220. I can't. If the older you get, there's 220, 221, whatever it takes.
It won't go away. No, honestly though, if retrospectives are something y'all want to bring back, I'm more than happy to grab that football and run with it. I'll pick up that fumble. No, so we got Batman 251. This was the return of Joker coming back to comics after kind of having been mandated to not be used because of how overused he was there for a while. And again, I think this is a time period where did this come after the Demon Saga or part of the Demon Saga?
Oh yeah, that was 242.
Okay, that's right. So this is really like Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams, or as Joe said earlier, were definitely firing on all cylinders. They had introduced Ra's al Ghul, kind of ran with that story, created an iconic set of characters. That's when he introduced Matches Malone, was during the Demon Saga, and then we get this coming.
Did you know that Matches Malone, a character that has been around for 50 years now, was only alive for 3 panels in his one appearance as the actual Matches Malone?
Yep.
Yes. I can't remember where I read that, but yes, I do know that.
Maybe you watched our retrospective.
Maybe I did. Maybe that's why, because I did watch those. But yeah, I mean, the Return of Joker, this kind of brought back like a serious side of Joker. Any thoughts on this comic and kind of what it did for Batman, or particularly for the Joker moving forward?
I mean, this predates Jaws in making sharks terrifying.
Fair.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember this story because I always get it confused with the one that ends where Joker tries to steal the Batmobile but can't get it to start. I know it's not this one, but that's another O'Neil and Adams story.
Yeah, this was what is it? What is it called? Oh, the Joker's 5-Way Revenge.
Yeah.
This was at a time they were bringing back a lot of the Silver Age villains because 234 they brought Two-Face back. I know they brought the Riddler back at some point, not long after this, and
Denny always hated the Riddler. It's funny.
But this was a beautiful. This is a beautiful story, and I'd like to have the actual comic again, but I'm not rich.
Oh, agreed. They did the facsimile of this not too long ago and released it, which I always love kind of seeing that come out. Just to kind of flip through the ads that were in the original comics. It's always fun to revisit. Real quick in the comments, we have Minfei saying so that Joe can crank out his Star Trek Blu-rays? ? Joe, you got some Star Trek Blu-rays?
I'm lacking in the Blu-ray department. I don't know if you guys maybe picked up on this, but I put a lot of money into collected comics.
Fair. Fair.
So, but yeah, I have some Blu-rays. I don't have, the original Star Trek, but I've watched it. It's a good show. People should watch it.
I've heard that.
I've heard that as well. I need to sit down and actually go through it at some point, but my schedule, that's a big undertaking.
Oh, you've never seen the original series all the way through?
No. I used to watch episodes here and there when they'd come on. But like after school, it'd be on TV when I came home after school. But I've never sat down.
But you're talking about like Next Generation, Voyager, like Deep Space Nine.
No,
like you're not talking original, right?
I think like TNT, like USA, something like that. They had the older, like the original series. On Fox and stuff, they usually had the Voyager and crap. But next book, Detective Comics 439, written by Steve Englehart, art by Sal Amendola. So for the longest time, well, a couple of things about this book. For the longest time, I used to kind of say, if you want like just a single kind of one-shot story that really sums up Batman, I always felt like this was a good issue to turn to. But I particularly love this issue because I might be remembering incorrectly, but I feel like Batman doesn't say anything the entire issue. I'd have to go back and double check, but I think he's quiet pretty much the entire issue.
Well, this has nothing to do with our topic tonight, but I particularly like this and all of the 100-page super spectaculars of Batman and Detective, because there's so many great stories in every issue. And this one had the now very famous Manhunter series.
Yes.
They should read that.
They should. It's pretty good. Walt Simonson's going to be at New York Comic Con. He did some stuff with that Manhunter series.
Joe, are you going to NYCC?
I am.
Very nice. I know Drew's going to be there.
Yeah, Drew is going to be there.
Breen, do you go to any cons?
Generally just the one in town. I worked at the last two, 21 and 22. I was planning to do it again this year, but my brother picked that week to go on a family vacation, and I'm the only other person that can run his store, so I ran his record store while he was gone, so I didn't get to go this year.
Nice.
But it's probably just as well, because I have a tendency to, it's kind of like a reversal of finances. If I go to a show, I spend money I don't have.
Right.
And at least this way I got to, make money instead of spend money. So that's what I told myself as my friend kept going, man, you wouldn't believe all the great stuff I'm finding at the show. It's like, fuck off.
No, agreed. I spend way too much money when I go to shows. Way too much money. We're going to go ahead and move on to the pick that Breen brought in for tonight. And it's a collection of stories. I think it gets considered the first actual collection of stories in Batman, but Strange Apparitions.
I brought visual aids.
Oh.
If you have full screen me for just a second.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
there we go.
Legend has it that Steve Englehart was contacted by DC to come basically revitalize the Justice League. And he'd already made an arrangement to go to Europe in a year. So he said, I will come over and do this for a year, but I get to write Batman too. And so they gave him Detective, because Detective was on the verge of being canceled. In these 6 issues that I'm showing here, he brought back Hugo Strange, Deadshot, the Monster Men, Hugo Strange's Monster Men.
Yep.
And arguably the best known Joker story since maybe the first one, the Joker Fish story.
Yep.
And in these days, okay, you can put the camera back on Joe now. Now, at the time, the comics had dwindled down to 17 story pages. So this is, I as we discussed earlier before we went on the air, math is hard. So 6 times 17, that's what this story is, and it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah,
I personally, I think it's the best arc in the character's history. You use Silver St. Cloud, who he should still be with, but that's beside the point.
I first read this years ago based on a recommendation from one of my friends, Jay. And Jay is a big proponent for Silver St. Cloud
Yes.
returning to Batman. But yeah, it's one of those stories that there's so much into it, and it's not like it's not, I talked about it how it's kind of like the first recognized quote unquote collection, but it's not like it's written for the trade. It's individual short 1 to 2 issue stories with a small thread kind of leading through it. Kind of like how Marvel would always kind of approach their comics in a way.
Yeah, good. Well, he'd been at Marvel through the 70s, and that's why they got, because they wanted him to give characters in the Justice League distinct personalities, which they really hadn't had up to that point. Everybody was kind of the same, except for occasionally Green Arrow and Hawkman would snipe at each other. But so he brought, one of the things he introduced was everything Barry said. Basically, Wonder Woman would just trash him, and no matter what he did, it was like she just treated him like dirt. And so they introduced some conflicts. I think he also brought back Mantis from the Avengers series, disguised as a different character. But yeah, the stuff he did, on Batman was, as I said, it just absolutely incredible. And
yeah. So I know you specifically mentioned, or you brought up 471, I think, through 476, 477. And then there's 2 issues at the end of this collection, if you were to find the collection, that's Lin Wein writing. But the villains you mentioned, I think you start off with Dr. Phosphorus, I believe, right?
Yeah, but Walt Simonson was on art. So these 6 issues were just the 6 that Englehart, Rogers, and Austin did.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, it kind of led into this main chunk with Englehart and Rogers, and then kind of finished out with Lin Wein and Rogers. But I think throughout the full kind of collection scope of this, you've got Penguin, you've got Deadshot, Dr. Phosphorus, Joker, Dr. Hugo Strange. And when we kick things off, Joe was talking about how the Bronze Age really kind of encapsulates so much of what Batman the Animated Series was. This collection of stories, 2 of the episodes from Batman in the Animated Series were inspired from these stories. So you had the Jokerfish one, which was almost a dead lift. But then you had the episode with Hugo Strange kind of, I think, discovering Batman's identity. And that, I think, was kind of played into, I can't think of what the episode was titled, but I think Batman goes to like a resort type thing.
He dies protecting Batman's secret identity in this story arc.
Yeah.
Oh, and also they believe this is the story arc that introduced Boss Thorne.
Yeah, who is heavily used in the animated series.
I gotta tell you real quick that after I'd sold my collection and before I got these back, I found what appeared to be a great deal on a paper on a soft cover of this collection. So I ordered it. Waited patiently for it to come in the mail. I got it. And I opened it up. The text was in German.
Oh, man.
And I said, well, I threw a bit of a tantrum. I said, I need to find a German and they should read it to me.
I don't know if I can think of something less appealing than a German reading me comics. They're not my favorite accent. And I'm German, but
I dated a German in college.
With the German accent?
A little bit. I mean, he what was it? His name. He was Thomas, and his mother was like spoke like New German first and stuff like that. Yeah, she had a very thick accent.
Right. Just a few comments real quick. DJ Smith, Lin Wein having Clayface melting people was crazy. I think loved that. Yeah, coming into the last 2 issues of this. And it was Preston Payne, I believe, right? Clayface?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Definitely some good stuff there. And Minphase, Englehart's uploaded the scripts to the canceled sequel of Strange Apparitions on his site, but the link is dead, so I wish I could read it. Didn't they have a series of stories that they consider kind of like a sequel to this?
I think it was called Dark Detective.
Yes, that's it.
It just proved Thomas Wolfe right.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah, it's in that Marshall Rogers hardcover. But yeah, it's not my favorite. I actually think and I think you picked them up months ago or something. Those Legends of the Dark Knight, that it was like Archie Goodwin, James Robinson, and Marshall Rogers.
Yeah.
Was that I thought was a better story that
Yeah.
brought back Silver St. Cloud.
That's
Agreed.
right. And Joe, having what appears to be an eidetic memory, reminded me of that. And I've found them and read them, and I'd forgotten again.
Yeah, but no, it's a pretty cool story. Like, it's not trying to be a sequel to Strange Apparitions. It's a different kind of story. But I mean, any time you get Marshall Rogers really doing art is just a joy. You know,
Yeah.
even when it's not the best stories, like his Englehart and Rogers on Silver Surfer is pretty good too. It's not as good as Batman, but it's some good stuff.
Yeah.
I like those.
Yeah.
Agreed. That's something that I know once we finish kind of talking about the specific stories that I want to kind of circle back to is, and Joe, you had mentioned this, is just how incredible the art was to this time period. But we'll save that for last to kind of cap off the night. Did you have anything else you wanted to add to the Strange Apparitions, Joe?
Well, I think if I did, we're never going to end. So,
all right. Moving on to Detective Comics number 526. This was Joe's pick. So, Joe, I'm going to let you kind of run away with this giant size issue.
Sure. Well, I was thinking of it because we see a lot of these sort of anniversary issues. They've become more and more popular to like have these like oversized anniversaries. And doing something like this, like, well, I mean, first off, it's a little unique in that it's both like an anniversary story and it's Jerry Conway bowing out of writing duties on Batman. And having this sort of celebration that just feels a little more natural. Like, it's, you know, obviously it's not completely natural. They do figure out a way, like, you know, they built it up in a way where it's like Killer Croc's in town and the other villains in the Rogues Gallery want to kill Batman before he does. So it's like, but it doesn't feel as contrived as some other anniversaries and other situations to cram as many characters as possible into a situation. But in this oversized issue, which is like kind of like, it's about 2.5 issues in length, you get to sort of see all these characters in a single issue, and you also get setting up Jason Todd to be the next Robin. He doesn't become the next Robin for a little bit still, but it sets that up, and really, and it helps in this narrative that they've been building for years. And I mean, you see some of it even in like the Marshall Rogers stuff, like a little bit, but you know, you see it really start happening with Marv Wolfman on the book, and Jerry, of slowly building up Dick to leave the role of Robin. And you know, so this is another part of that.
Yeah.
And I mean, even, you know, when you're reading this, it's so quaint now when you can read this and be like, oh wow, it's Batman, Robin, Batgirl, and they're being helped by Catwoman and Talia. This family is huge.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many characters, but you know, you have all these characters, you know, helping each other out and fighting for the same cause. And Talia and Selena go their own way after this. Dick also leaves, you know, more or less like at the end of it. So it doesn't feel like it's a story that has a lot of characters in it.
Yeah.
But ends in a way where it doesn't feel bloated. It doesn't feel like, oh, now we got like, you know, 37 Robins hanging out and everyone wants to be Robin because, if Batman and all of this stuff was real, all the kids would want to be Robin and not Batman. Like, I still don't understand that at all. It boggles my mind every time.
Agreed. Breen, did you want to add anything to this story?
Yeah, this actually was the culmination of several storylines, and one of the things that happened in this issue that is chilling, whether it was this 1983 when this came out,
Yeah,
or if it happened today, when it's the scene at the zoo in the alligator pit, where because just the Commissioner Gordon rightfully telling Robin, basically, you fucked up.
yeah.
You got his parents killed.
Mm-hmm.
And then he takes the guard's gun and just jumps into the pit and starts, wailing into the crocodiles. See what I did there? Wailing. That's Killer Croc's name. See, that's yeah. And that was a really chilling moment in that book. And you think about it, and Joe and I say this all the time. We read something like this. If this were today, this single issue would be a trade. Because they spread this out over 6 freaking issues.
Yep.
And I said this. I'm really glad you mentioned this in particular, Joe, because I've been reading a bunch of Batman. So where do they find his parents? What issue do they find his parents? Never occurred to me to look in this one. So I got to read that and get my memory refreshed.
Nice.
Yeah, definitely a staple, and I think bringing to what you just mentioned about the decompressed storytelling that we have these days, it just drags stuff out. Sometimes, like, it's definitely not needed, and I miss what comics of this time would do, with just kind of like delivering the story and not trying to make too much out of it. Because I think when you try to make too much out of it, you kind of lose your way in your narrative, and this has just a good pace and lets you kind of just travel on through. And Joe's right, like, you don't get it doesn't make too it's not trying too hard. And even with the decompressed stories, it's like not only is it decompressed, but it just feels like they're trying too hard.
Something that's hard to explain to people that have just been in the hobby for a handful of years, or even 10 to 15, when comics' only goal was to be a comic book, this was commonplace. We don't have that anymore. And a lot of people misconstrue when old timers like me say, we want comics to be the way they used to be. They automatically assume that means, no blacks, no gays, no this, no that. No, it's we want this.
Yeah.
Something where you can pack a trade paperbacks with the stories. Well, hell, I take it back. This was 2.5 issues. This would have been 12 if it were done today.
Yeah.
This is what we're talking about when comics weren't Netflix pitches.
Yeah.
Or when the second, third page used to be an action sequence and not the title credits like you would see in a movie theater. I don't read comics to see season 1 or that's frustrating for people that have been around forever. When like I said, I came up on stuff like this because I've been reading these silly things since late 1975. And like I said, and they all used to be like this.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the older comics that I picked up recently and started kind of going through was Spectre. And that was kind of like the refreshing moment for me of like, oh, thank God it's not these super drawn out stories.
Which run?
Ostranders. So.
Doug mentioned run before the one before that is also worth reading.
I actually own that entire run in floppies. They're not in the best condition, but I have them.
Yes.
So, I'm trying to remember if we had another story after this.
Lopez.
No. So, Joe, since you're the one that kind of referenced it, I want you to kind of talk about just the glory of the art that we had during this Bronze Age run, because it's easy to forget, and especially like, for instance, when I was reading this stuff, because these came before I was born, so. But me going through, I didn't read them consecutively in order. I would read issues here and there based on what I could get my hands on. So even though I was reading them, even though I knew the issue number, I didn't always have a grasp on when these stories actually took place within the history of Batman. So much of this is kind of like hodgepodged, and I need to try to just go through and just really just read the release of them. But when you look back at the artists we had during this time period, I mean, some of the ones we've mentioned, you've got Neil Adams, but you got Don Newton, Lopez, Marshall Rogers, Jim Aparo, who's one of my personal favorites. Giordano, like there were just so many artists here that just delivered.
I forgot to show off the Luis Garcia Lopez cover, but yeah,
I'll see your Jose Luis Garcia Lopez and raise you Zany Haney.
That's true. We love me some Zany Haney, but no, I mean, Jose Luis Garcia Lopez does a really great job. He's probably one of the best, Superman artists out there. And he also did enough, Batman for them to put out a pretty fat hardcover, all things considered. But,
and if you see an image out there on a shirt or if you go to like a Half Price Books, those metal tins that have, DC, it's always Lopez's art.
Yeah. And one thing too about Gene Colan here is this. Personally, I think this is one of the better second acts that an artist really got. I thought he was a perfect fit for Batman in a way that you don't always see. I mean, it's like. I think Don Heck did a good job at DC when he came to DC. I don't think it was the same as Gene Colan coming on Batman. I think he did incredible stuff. He was such a good fit. And Don Newton too, who again, passed way too soon. But I mean, he just had this feel where you had that sort of creepy feel, that noir feel to it, but it also felt kinetic and lively. It wasn't quite as it's not quite Gene Colan. It's different, but they worked. They were such a good match, I thought, to have them running at the same time.
Yeah. There was something about the way Gene Colan drew his shadows, the shadow on his characters, and how you still had the pop of color just kind of randomly in the shadows that would kind of peek through. I don't know. I can't speak to it well enough to explain why I like it. I just felt like it was striking enough and different enough that I appreciated it for being different but still looking really cool. Would you say Colan is your favorite Batman artist, Joe?
Oh, I mean, it's hard not to say Marshall Rogers, but Gene Colan is Gene Colan's really high up there for me, and especially just when you combine Don Newton and Gene Colan together, that stretch is one of the best stretches you're ever going to get. But Gene Colan's definitely up there for me in terms of Batman artists. And what was it? He was. He's someone that Rachel Pollack also liked a lot. We would talk about Gene Colan. And I think it was a conversation I had with Rachel, and she might have been the one to say this, no one could draw a hand turning a doorknob like Gene Colan.
Fair.
Just those guys, the way he would do it, it'd be just so creepy and atmospheric. It was just wild.
Did she also mention nobody could draw a hand splintering a door and the knob like Gene Colan? Dracula was doing that almost every issue.
Oh yeah.
But
Oh yeah.
yeah, and people forget that you said second act,
Yeah.
but he had lengthy runs on Submariner, Daredevil,
Yep.
Yeah.
Iron Man, obviously Tomb of Dracula.
Yep.
Prior to coming over to Marvel as Adam Austin, because in
Yes.
those days you didn't want people to realize. Now I realize I could see a writer being able to disguise their style, but
Yep.
I'm guessing Adam Austin wasn't fooling anybody.
Yeah.
But he was also a prolific romance comics artist
Mm.
at DC.
Yes.
And at Marvel. He did original stories for the two romance comics that Marvel did. And he did 2 of the 3 issues of Burke's Law comics.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's
He-
true.
he- he-
When you bring up the other aliases, I loved when Jim Starlin in the 70s would do stuff at DC. He was Steve Apollo.
I don't remember. Where does he have any credits as Steve Apollo?
He has some
I-
He has Steve Apollo credits in Legion.
I have
When
to
he
look
did
for
some
that.
Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes, and they were really good stories. He didn't do a lot of them, but the ones he did were
Here,
really good.
let me pull the omnibus. Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. My doesn't work that way here.
Yeah,
I love it.
but yeah, no, it's good. I do have the issues. I just thought I'd show some restraint.
We appreciate that, Joe. But contractually, you are obligated to
He's
show the omnibus.
he's one omnibus lift away from a hernia.
That's true. That's true.
Restraint.
We don't want to risk Joe not making comics because of a hernia.
No, that would be terrible.
That would be awful.
I would love personally to never get a hernia. If that's possible, I would love that.
Agreed.
I have one that I need to have repaired as we speak.
Yeah, but if I could like not have that, that'd be great.
You know what? Hernias are kind of cool. People should get them.
There was that Weird Al parody, "Living with a Hernia," of the James Brown song "Living in America." You know, I believe that was on his Polka Party album. I think that was his worst performing album at his peak. But yeah, I could also talk about Weird Al for hours.
I was Joe. You have this uncanny ability to talk about the most random thing for hours. And I'm like, how does he know this much shit about shit?
Yeah, well, what are you gonna do,
right? Yeah.
Boy, that wasn't a setup line.
I know, right? Breen, do you have a favorite artist from the Bronze Age for Batman? I know it's really tough.
Yeah, it's hard not to default to Adams.
Yeah,
because he's he's the best.
Yeah.
But yeah, Gene Colan was so moody. I mean, even moodier than Adams was able to do. Because that was his specialty, and especially after doing Tomb of Dracula for 8 years. I mean, that was and obviously Marshall Rogers, but there's unfortunately a small sample size compared to some of the others.
For sure.
Yeah,
I would say Don Newton also right up there.
Yeah.
Wished he, it's sad that he died so young. And I think he did 1 or 2 books for Marvel in his entire career. So so you didn't get a chance to see him, branch out much. And yeah, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think the aesthetic of Jim Aparo has always been something that I've been really drawn to. But I mean, Neil Adams to me shaped so much of what I think so many artists have pulled to deliver for Batman. And then Marshall Rogers. I think the reason I don't tend to turn to him is because he only had 6-7 issues total.
They're so good though.
I know.
And he colors
agree.
himself. He's one of the few artists then that color himself. And it's kind of cheating though, because he's got Terry Austin on the inks. And if you're not going to have Dick Giordano inking your Batman story, Terry Austin's pretty great.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I mean, it's just it's the what you mentioned in the chat when we were getting prepared for this show. Joe, it's just like we were blessed and did not even realize it.
Oh yeah,
You know, and I wish more people that are reading present day modern comics would go back to these comics to see how good the art actually is, because I don't think people understand the level of art that you can have. Because I think today's audience is so caught up with how the character looks and how the character is drawn that they don't realize that they're missing out on story that's coming in. Just the framing of the panel, the sequential storytelling, the atmosphere in the background. Because now all we get are characters over, ombre colors. It's a completely different world now.
I think you're right. A couple of things. Jim Aparo, I neglected to mention him because I was thinking Batman Detective, and by the
yeah,
time he got to do Batman, he was past his prime. But
yeah,
a lot of those years on Brave and the Bold, he was a notch below Adams from
yeah.
Yeah,
about
Oh yeah.
69 through when he found his sea legs, so to speak, through about the mid to late 70s. Fantastic stuff. And to your point about modern audiences, and I don't. This is not a knock on this particular artist, but I hear so much praise heaped on Jorge Jimenez, who is a good artist,
yeah,
but he would not have stood out in the era that we're talking about.
no,
He would have been another artist, and he probably would have been, I want to say, in the lower tier of the people we've mentioned, if there is such a thing.
I do enjoy Jorge. I think, yeah, again, it goes back to the aesthetic today is so different with art. Because I mean, and I think it comes down to digital art. I was talking about this with some friends that when you see people that draw with actual pencils, you can tell a difference. And it just seems like there's so much more life to the art than you see with digital art.
Well, there's also, I mean, some of it too is things getting lost in over the course of either the inking or the coloring. One of the
Mm.
problems, it depends, but is it's become standard for a lot of artists to ink themselves, whether that's the
Yeah,
best, whether that's going to give you the best product or not.
right.
And page rates and stuff tend to lend themselves to, you know what, I can kind of do scratchy pencils because I know I'm going to ink myself, so I'm not going to take as long,
Right.
and I'll get more money. So I get it, but I think there is a lot to say about professional inkers and
Oh yeah.
pairing the right penciler with the right inker, not just who are two names we can put on a book, but
Yeah.
who would be the best inker for this penciler. And then I think coloring tends to be too convoluted. You tend
Yeah.
to have too much shading, which ends up making it muddied. Like, as much as I love the Ed Brubaker Captain America run, for example,
Hmm.
there's a lot of issues where the coloring's so like muddied, and it's dulling the line work.
Yeah.
And I wish that we just had some of these like simpler color palettes or flat colors uh, to make it stand out more. That's personally what I like. I have heard from people that they don't like flat colors and they really want like these like abstract colors, and I get it. It's an aesthetic choice, but I feel like there's room for more flat colors and trying that approach, which also theoretically would be less time consuming as well.
Yeah. I mean, even looking at this picture of Batman here, for the most part, it's flat colors. You just have
Yeah.
pencils kind of creating the shading almost. And I
Yeah, it's the
miss,
pencils and inking that's
yeah.
really,
I miss it. I miss seeing crosshatch, and I think too. You mentioned inking, and it's sad, but I think a lot of our editors that are kind of running books don't even know how to tell the difference between what would be the right inker that would go best versus just getting an inker. And I think that's kind of sad. And look, I'm not saying I could go through and be like, this is the best inker for this artist. I would fail miserably at doing that. But I do think if you're going to have someone behind the scenes creating comics, they should have an awareness. And I don't think they do, or they don't care, or they're just trying to get whatever the cheapest option is.
Can it be both?
Possibly.
Okay. All right, Joe. I'm sure you knew this was coming. Give me your three. Let's settle for one. Top artist inker teams. Yeah,
artist inker team.
Yeah.
That's because there's a handful. I mean, I feel like not mentioning John Byrne, Terry Austin would be sacrilege.
That's fair.
Obviously, Neil Adams, Dick Giordano. While we're talking about this, obviously, Marshall Rogers and Terry Austin, because they worked together on Silver Surfer as well. They were a good team, and especially with Marshall coloring himself, it's just perfection. There is, I mean, this is more of a, what was it? More of a Legion thing, but when it was Keith Giffen with, trying to think if I'm going to say his name, like Larry Malstadt. Yeah, Malstadt.
I know you're talking about. I've never heard his name pronounced, so I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't heard his name pronounced either, but that was some of the best Legion stuff ever, was that combination of those two. Whenever Keith was working with Larry, unreal. And then George Perez and I'm gonna butcher his name too because I never say it. What was it?
Romeo Tengal.
Romeo Tengal is another incredible team.
He was so good at inking George Perez that on the 5th issue of the Teen Titans, George, I guess, might have had a fetish con to attend, so he didn't do the issue.
Mm-hmm.
And Kurt Swan filled in for him. And I was about 5 pages in before I realized it.
Yeah. No, Romeo Tengal is incredible. That was such a good team. I mean, great inker, but also that was such a good team. I feel trying to think those are all up there, and then God, trying to think. I feel there's a generation here that if we don't name Jim Lee and Scott Williams, it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, probably.
So,
I mean, because they've actually worked together for a couple of decades, right? At least.
Oh yeah, years. No, I mean that's back to the X-Men days.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah.
And Williams, by the way, pretty damn good artist in his own respect. Not necessarily, you can look up his stuff, but as far as drawing humans, he's not the best. But cars, Transformers, stuff like that, he can draw some really impressive looking some work there. What about shoot? I had someone on my mind and now I can't think of them.
Oh, while you're thinking, I'm gonna submit Kane and Jansen.
Yeah.
Good call.
There's not a lot together. I mean, I know there's a what if. What if number 3 is my favorite, probably my favorite comic of all time for art. There's something about that, and I know they did a handful of Daredevils in the 140s, but they were great together.
Would you consider George Perez's inker? Was it Alve? No.
No, I feel like a horse's ass right now because I'm like, the fact that I didn't mention Jack Kirby, Joe Sinnott.
I knew what you were. I knew that's where you were going.
God, I was just like, God damn it! How did I not say that earlier? Because no one has ever inked the Thing as well as Joe Sinnott. Like it doesn't happen.
Fair.
Like on Jack Kirby, Joe Sinnott, like that Thing is just so iconic.
You know who else was a good inker for Kirby when he wasn't erasing his background? Vince Coletta.
Yeah, no, for sure.
When he wasn't erasing his backgrounds. I love the story on that. Sheesh.
But you'd have that, and then well, Jack Kirby had a few decent. I like the New Gods stuff, like the Fourth World stuff with Jack Kirby when Mike Royer was inking.
Nice.
Not bad. Not my favorite, but yeah, it got Mike.
It's not my favorite, but yeah.
Kid at the time.
Yeah,
it's always interesting to. I was gonna say it's always interesting to look at images of art from an artist with different inkers on it, just to see how much the inker contributes or harms the art.
Some Joe was the guy Joe was talking about before. Keith Giffen was the artist on the Defenders when I started reading. And I go, and Klaus Janson, how you pronounce it, was the anchor on that. And I thought, this stuff is beautiful. Until Janson took an issue off. And it was back during Giffen's Kirby homage phase.
Yep.
It was like, holy God, what is this? I mean, I appreciate it now, but at the time, it was like, what?
I mean,
Jansen's my favorite inker ever since.
I was gonna say, if you ever want to see how much Janson contributes, just look at when he's inking Frank Miller versus when he's not.
Yeah. Also, I cannot sit here and say I am a Superman fan without acknowledging Kurt Swan and Murphy Anderson.
Fair. Completely fair.
So,
I love it. Well, gentlemen, go ahead. Oh, I thought one of you said something. Sorry.
Yeah.
We are reaching that 10 o'clock mark. So I want to go ahead and kind of wrap things up real quick. Before we kind of say where people can find us, is there anything else that we want to say about these issues of Batman that we kind of covered? Nope. Fair game. Cool.
No, I would. Yeah, I mean, I would just say, actually look them up if you haven't read them. Check them out. A lot of these are available digitally through their app. A lot of the trades and stuff that have these issues, like Detective 27, very easy to get a hold. Like it is, they've reprinted that. You could probably still get the facsimile that came out either last year or whatever it is, or earlier this year. Like you can get your hand on that without too much trouble.
Yeah. I was going to say with Detective 27, even if by all means, if you're a physical comic kind of guy, I get it. But if you're just wanting to read it for the sake of reading it to experience it, you can get it for free online. I think Comixology has it free to read online. So,
Yeah. So that and a bunch of stuff, like a lot of the Neil Adams type stuff, if it's not in print at the moment, it comes back in print in one format or another. Like you'll be able to get that. They did a facsimile of 251, didn't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like that's been reprinted a ton too. Strange Apparitions, there are I think all the trades at this point are out of print, but there's been so many that you should be able to find. It might not be the most recent version, but you should be able to find a version of it at a reasonable price. Unfortunately, the issues aren't the cheapest detective back issues. So
and not always the easiest to find either.
Yeah, because it turns out it's good. So
people should read it.
Go figure.
Yeah, and but like Detective 526, you should be able to find without. You should be breaking the bank on that one.
Agreed. Yeah, I'm just gonna second kind of what you're saying. Like the part of the reason we do this is to help people kind of discover comics and go read them. Because and Joe, you know this. Like when I was planning on creating this channel and doing these types of shows and stuff, one of the things that I focused on was I really want to get away from this like everything is crap mentality or theme that you tend to see from so many YouTube shows. And I really want to focus on stuff that I loved because I my history with Batman and working for Batman News, there became a point where I'm not going to say I was hate reading because I was reading for my job, but I got to a point where I really didn't want to talk about so many of these books because I didn't enjoy them. And I just felt terrible talking about stuff I didn't enjoy because you could tell I didn't enjoy it. So I really wanted to come into this channel and focus on stuff that I love. And yeah, every now and then we're going to talk about things that aren't working. It's fine. But I really want to lean heavily into the stuff that I love, into the things that I think are good, and things that aren't talked about. Because there's so many channels, there's so many sites these days. They're doing all these lists, and everything that they're putting on there is stuff that came out, at this point, 90s and beyond. Like there's so much history that's completely getting ignored. And it's crazy because we're in a time now where these stories, these issues, these comics are so much more easily accessible than they have ever been. And still less people are reading them.
And one of the sad things, like you mentioned, I mean, on lists of like must-read Batman stories that most sites and things put out, Detective 27 will be on a lot of them, sure.
Yeah.
Maybe, and this is a maybe Batman 251. Everything else we talked about, good luck finding it on a list. But what you will find is Dark Knight Returns, Batman Year One, The Killing Joke, Hush.
Oh,
and it's just you just keep going through the Long Halloween, and you could just maybe Arkham Asylum, but I feel like even that doesn't show up on some.
No, it doesn't. It's weird. On some lists, Arkham Asylum will show up as potentially like one of the number ones, but it's usually those obscure lists. But you're right. And look, those aren't bad books; they're good. But it's just it's what everyone is recommending, and it's all people are reading. And again, there's so many great stories worth reading. I need to go back and myself kind of revisit some of these because a lot of these stories that I read for the sake of consuming to be able to speak to them to a degree and not really letting myself enjoy them. I want to go back and enjoy them, and I want to go back and enjoy them. Kind of what I was talking about, reading them as they were released to kind of experience it through these creators' runs. So
and I could keep going. Batman, the Man Who Laughs, Under the Red Hood, Mad Love, and just keep. It's like just keep going because it's like you could write some of these lists in your sleep. They're just it's like what God.
No, agreed.
Court of Owls.
Tom King's Batman run.
I don't see that, but
there was a list. No, I'll find it. I'll find the link and send it to you. There was a list of the best Batman runs, and he was like number 6, which is.
But that's a list of Batman runs that were probably all post-crisis, unless they threw in Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams, which isn't actually a run.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, it made me mad. I'll put it that way. All right, gentlemen. Joe, I'm gonna start with you. If people want to find you, where can they find you?
I am on Twitter and the Blue Sky thing at Joe Corallo, and I'm Corallo Joe on Instagram. You can also find me at New York Comic Con if you happen to be attending. I am doing portfolio reviews through Geeks Out at 1 o'clock on Thursday and Friday, and Saturday I'm doing a signing at 1 o'clock at the Mad Cave booth.
Awesome. Signing. Go get some. Go buy some Fantastic Joker. I'm really mad at myself because I didn't think about linking our episode where we went through some of your books in the description of this, and I should have. But okay. I think it's episode 14 or 15. Go check it out. We focus on Joe Corallo, talk about a lot of his works. If you're going to be at New York Comic Con, go buy one of these books. Go swing by, have him sign it, even if it's not a Mad Cave book. Just he'll still take Joe Corallo books from other publishers, right?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Of course. But yeah, go see Joe if you're going to be at NYCC. Give him some love. And Drew will also be there. So if you see him, go by, say hello to Drew, and check out his work as well.
And Sheena #2 came out last week, which I edited and packaged. So you can also check that out if you want something recent.
Yeah, it's Sheena.
Sheena, Queen of the Jungle, Fatal Exams.
Fatal Exams. I was trying to. I started to say something with class, and I was like, nope, that's not right. But yes. All right, Mr. Breen. If people want to find you, where can they find you?
First, I want to say, I won't be at NYCC, whatever the hell that is, and which means I still will not have I will not have a Joe Corallo autographed book, because when one of the issues of Beckstar didn't make it to our store, I contacted Joe and said, Joe, old buddy, old pal, could you send me one? And he did. He sent me 4 comics, 3 of which were signed by the creators. The only one that wasn't was Beckstar.
That is what happened.
So how am I supposed to wait for him to get huge and put that on eBay if he didn't send me one?
I saw right through Breen. That's what happened.
That's a lot to see through.
Well, I gave you a Walt Simonson signature in there too.
Yeah, I think Walt Simonson. I think Mags and somebody else.
Yeah.
But I'm on Twitter. I think Eric Sean Breen 1. Who cares? Nobody follows it. But every Wednesday I do a show called 4 Color Fossils on the Graphic Man channel, where it's a bunch of guys in my age group showing comics and other pop culture related items. And Joe's been on the show a couple times promoting Archie stuff, and and especially it's if you like seeing old comics and stuff, it's a really fun watch, and especially in October, because some of these guys have incredible collections of pre-code horror. And since it's Halloween season, they've been showing a bunch of them. One of the guys was showing a bunch of EC comics the other night, and it's like, man, it's a blast. And then Fridays and Sundays, we butcher comics verbally on the Geeky Puppet Show starting at 8:15. Joe has also... It's Joe Mad Mod Corallo, because he has read with us. Oddly enough, we've had no luck getting him to come back. I don't know.
Every time I'm asked, and it's not intentional, I know, I've literally been out of this state the last 2 times. I've been like, I'm in Baltimore. I'm in Portland.
He's in Baltimore. He's in Portland.
I wouldn't make up being in Baltimore. But no, I mean, it's that works. But also, I should plug this since you mentioned Halloween. If you're an Amazon Prime member, most of the Universal Monster movies are free with your Amazon Prime membership. So go check them out. This season so far, I've watched Dracula, the Wolfman, The Creature from the Black Lagoon, The Invisible Man, and Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. which I believe is the only Abbott and Costello movie on there with the Universal Monsters that's free. You have to pay for Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy, The Invisible Man, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which is great because Boris Karloff is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in that one. So yeah, check them out.
No, Josh, one night when we asked Joe, he was rushing for an excuse, so he said, "I'm in a portalette." I go, okay.
Oh my God, I love it.
Those Universal Monster movies are pretty good for people if you haven't watched those ever.
Yeah. I see you changing the subject down there, Mister. Before we get to that,
well, I'm also what was it? Next week, there's a double feature of Nosferatu and the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari with a live band doing the music. So I'm very excited to be seeing that.
That would actually be awesome.
That would be
right.
Yeah.
Right. I love that. I saw The Unknown, which was a silent film at the Alamo Draft House a few weeks ago with Lon Chaney and Joan Crawford. It was they're in the movie. I didn't see it with both of them.
I mean, yeah, I was gonna say they're dead. So
before you get any ideas, I didn't either.
But no, silent movies in theaters are fun. I love going to see a silent film on the big screen.
Agreed. Before I let anyone know where they can find me, Story Nexus hopped in. Hello, sir. You're catching us at the end of the show, but what is up? And yes, we talked about strange apparitions for sure.
That's true.
As far as finding me, you can find me at Joshua L. McDonald on Twitter or at ByPopped. Either one works. And you can find us here every Tuesday. Most Sundays I'm with Max on Max's Man Cave. Most Thursdays I'm with Roman on his show. We've been covering television series. Some were quite painful, specifically Secret Invasion, followed by Ahsoka. But Ahsoka was easier to swallow than Secret Invasion.
You should watch good shows like The Prisoner. That's good. You should watch that. Or that's a good show.
We're gonna spend this month actually discussing some horror films. So looking forward to that. And we're starting off with The Prophecy with Christopher Walken.
That's cool. I love the Saturday Night Live parody of that. That was great.
I need to look that up then because
it's so good. There's the bit where like he's just doing it to people at the office, and he's just like, I think he's with Rob Schneider or something, and he does the whole thing where he's like, like losing it, and he goes like, "You're gonna get a coffee. You're gonna bring it with you in the cab. You're gonna get to the office, but you forgot the coffee. It's in the cab. The cab, it's driving away. You don't get the coffee." And it's so good.
I love it.
It's really great. So I also recommend everyone, check that out. I was on a stream at Pop Culture Philosophers last night discussing Dario Argento's opera, which is considered one of the last great Dario Argento films in the stretch between Deep Red and opera. So if you want to hear that, you can go on that channel, Pop Culture Philosophers, and check that out. I've also talked about a number of other Dario Argento films on that channel, including Tenebrae and Suspiria. And I've also talked about, all sorts of films like Goodfellas, the animated French film Gandahar, a classic. I think we've all seen that. I probably don't have to go into it, but yeah.
Lord, I'm going to stop you before you make your way to Hallmark movies, especially Hallmark holiday movies. And I'm just going to say, if there are some Bronze Age Batman stories that you love, make sure you go share them in the comments. Let us know what you're reading. Or if there's anything that kind of reminds you of that time period, put them there. I'm going to close this out, and then I'm going to talk to these two gents behind the scenes to talk about maybe some future videos to do with them for a series. All right, y'all.
There are a lot more French animated
or put your favorite Dario Argento films in the comments.
Or do that. You know what? Put your favorite anything.
The answers are Deep Red, Suspiria, or Tenebrae. I think.
Don't lead the witness.
Yeah, don't or create a war on which of those three are the best. How about that? It's going to be some hair pulling in the comments. All right, folks. I appreciate you for being here. Thank you so much, and I will see you next week. Everybody have a good night.
Good night, kids.
Good night.